In this session we're going to look at random numbers. Then we're going to look at using random numbers to simulate a dice roll and allow the user to determine how many times the dice is rolled and display the results of that on the screen. So let's get underway. First of all, I've got a HTML document set up and also a JS or external JavaScript file called functions.js, and I've linked to that with functions.js here with the script source call here. As long as these two files are in the same folder, this will work fine, and you can use Notepad++ or any other editor to actually develop this. I'll be using Dreamweaver, where I can have the code side and also the live view, which I can turn on here, as my runtime view on the right hand side. So let's get underway. With this link to my JavaScript functions file, I can now go into my JavaScript function and actually start writing some code in here. The first thing I want to do is declare a variable, because I need to be able to store the random number, and I'm going to have iRandom number, and this is where I'm going to store the random number that I'm going to produce. Now I need to let iRandom number store the random number that the computer is going to produce, so I'm going to let that equal to the random number the computer is going to produce. Now to make the computer produce a random number, we're going to use the math module of the computer, and we're going to use a particular method. The methods are listed. I'm going to use the random module and bracket with a semicolon. So this will actually declare a variable memory, generate a random number and store that in iRandom, and then we just want to display this on the stage over here. So we're going to use a document.writeLine, and what we want to see is iRandom number displayed on the screen. Now when I save this and refresh, you can see the random number being produced here. This random number will always be produced between 0 and the number 1. There's also 16 numerical numbers here. So it ensures that you get a really good random number that you can use. So what we want to do now is simulate the random number as a dice roll. To do that, we need to times the random number by 6. So this is the size of the dice. So in this case we've got a 6-sided die. So when I run the program now, notice we've got 0.3. Now the problem is we don't want 0 and we don't want the decimal point. So we need to round this random number to be unique. So rather than rounding in the normal round where 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 round up and 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 round down, that's not going to work for us because that'll round down to 0. If I use maths.floor function, that's a round down function, which means this will round down to the lowest, so 0.3 will actually round down to 0. But we want to use the maths.ceil, where anything that is 0.3, 0.3 will round up, which is maths.ceil, and therefore 0 will become 1. So let's put that into practice. So I need to put this into brackets, and then at the front of it I need to use the maths module again, and I want the ceil function. So let's generate a random number now. Notice we have 5, and what we want to see as I click here that we have nothing higher than a 6, nothing lower than a 1. So at the moment we've got a 1 and we've got a 6, and no other numbers above that have come out. So I'll keep refreshing a couple of more times, and you notice that we've gone through the different numbers. So if I wanted to change the size of the dice and wanted to say a 21-sided dice, I could easily come in here and change this to 21, and this will now generate numbers between 1 and 21. And we had 21 and 1 are the first two numbers that come up, and it'll pick numbers in between those. So it's an easy way of doing that. Or if I wanted a deck of cards, I could actually change that to 52, and we could generate random numbers that would represent each card in a, or each card in a deck. But we're going to go back to a dice roll which is of 6. Now I said at the start we want to be able to let the user determine how many times we roll dice. Now to do that, the first thing we need to do is declare a variable, and I roll dice, and then we need to ask the user to tell or to enter in the number of times they would like to roll the dice. So we're going to use and store that in iRollDice. So we're going to use iRollDice, and we're going to store the number of times. Now to get the information from the user, we're going to use the prompt function, which will put an alert box on the screen, and then we're going to ask them how many times do you want to roll the dice? Okay, now that's fairly long, you could shorten that. And we're going to put a default value in there and just say I want to roll it 5 times. And put a semicolon after this. So let's just run this program now. You'll notice that the first thing we'll do is actually prompt. And there you go. How many times do you want to roll the dice? And it's already got the default in there, 5. And then I can click on OK, and then it generates a random number for us. So what we now want to do is roll this and produce and display this on the screen the amount of times the user wants. To do this, we're going to use a fixed iteration. And if you're not sure on how fixed iteration works, you can go have a look at one of my other tutorials on this. And I'll put a link in the description below. But we're going to go for bracket I. And so I is an index and we need to declare that. So we go var I. So I is equal to 1. And while I is less than or equal to I roll dice, so the number of times they would like to roll the dice. So we start at 1 and we keep going until we get to the number that they've specified, like 5. So it keeps going through till this gets to 5. First time through, it's a number 1, and it will generate the random number, then display it. And then we need to increment this, so we go I++, and encapsulate that into a bookend with the start and end of this for do loop. So first time through, I is less than the number of rolls because it's 5 here. And then once it's done it once, it adds 1 to it. Now I is 2, does it second, third, fourth, fifth time. Fifth time through, I is not less than I dice roll, but it is equal to it, so it does it a 5th time. When it increments to 6, because of the I++, 6 is now greater than I dice roll, and it's not equal to, and because it's false, it then ends. And we can actually put a document.write on the end to say that we're at the end. So I'm just going to put a quote, finished, and that will be at the end of the program. So let's have a look at the program now. We click the start, so it's declared our variables and asked us this prompt. So we're at line 8. We're going to go with the default value 5, which has been set there, and then we're going to enter the for do loop. So we click go, and you notice we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 random numbers and finished. And that's all in a straight line, but I would like it to go down the page rather than in a straight line. To do that, I'm going to come back into here and I'm going to go plus, and I'm going to enter in a break tag, which is a HTML tag for next line. So run the program one more time. Let's go 5. And there's our 5 random numbers and they're finished on the bottom. So every time we go through, we loop through to the number that we specify. So in this case here, it's 5. So let's do something slightly different and say, okay, I would like 10 rolls of the dice. Click OK. And now there's actually 10 rolls of the dice there because it goes through the loop the number of times that the user determines for I dice roll here. So this is our stop number here. If I want to roll this 100 times, I can put 100 in there, go enter, and it rolls it 100 times. And you can see down the bottom here the 100 random numbers that is produced. So this is an easy way of actually generating a dice roll program using a for do loop with a random number generator. We've used the maths module and used the random method within the maths module, and also the rounding seal. And if you want to expand this program, you could put some counters in to work out how many times a 6 was rolled, etc. But that's a tutorial for another time. So I hope you found this informative, and I'll see you at the next one.